Welcome, my name is Mark Treadwell and this is the 12th in the series of video clips that supports the resource entitled Learning, which can be downloaded from marktreadwell.com free of charge, and you can use that resource for professional learning within your school or system or just for personal use. What we're looking at now is we've gradually developed a notion of how the brain learns, the learning process, the optimal learning process, which came off the back of that, and now we're looking at the underlying competencies that allow learners of any age to develop the capacity to be lifelong learners and be autonomous and independent learners. So we want learners who have agency over their own learning, but to do that they require these competencies. We've already looked at the notion of identity as a competency, and in this clip we're going to be looking at thinking and questioning and collaboration. There are numerous frameworks for thinking, and there's lots of people out there who've created rubrics and frameworks and architectures around that. What I want to look at in this presentation here is really look at the relationship between non-rational processes, what we might call intuitive, and rational or thoughtful processes when it comes to thinking processes. If we take some thinking modes such as creative, altruistic, critical, systems thinking, we can use those to differentiate between non-rational and rational processes. For example, if we look at creative thinking, often we will go somewhere and we'll look at a piece of art or a beautiful day, whatever it might be, and be inspired by that. It's not a rational, logical process. It's an intuitive process. And all of us engage in that intuitive process. And, for example, in the creative notion, we're inspired to do something. In the thoughtful process when it comes to creativity, we go and research to build our knowledge, to build our understanding, but the intuitive bit, the inspiration, welds those elements together using our brainwaves almost instantly in a particular situation when a prompt acts as a vector for linking those elements together into a single new thought or piece of understanding. Critical thinking, we can be perceptive, and sometimes we just know something's not quite right. We're not quite sure how or why, we just know something doesn't quite add up here. And that's our intuitive aspect of our critical thinking. Our thoughtful aspect here is being disciplined. It's about writing everything down or recording things in some way, shape or form and inspecting those and trying to find the links between them and actually trying to work out, is that valid? Is that real? So for each of our thinking modes, we have a non-rational element and we have a rational element. Now we can weld those together in terms of a framework, as you'll see in the diagram, and we've got our metacognitive thinking and our cognitive thinking. We've got the role of imagination, we've got the role of wisdom, and you can see the relationship between some of those elements in the diagram that's on the screen at the moment. But when we look at questioning from a perspective of thinking, questioning and thinking are interrelated. It's very hard to think without asking questions, and it's very hard to question without thinking. It's just mutually impossible. The two go together very strongly. So if we want to have young learners who are good thinkers, they also have to be good questioners. Trevor Bond has done some great work in this space, and I'm leveraging some of his work here. Trevor Bond talks about different layers of questioning, and we've expanded on that a little bit and added a couple more layers. But Trevor calls the first primary layer of questions, and he identifies those as the ones that open and refine the sorts of thinking we end up doing. So that primary question opens the door. It's the first question, and it gives us a framework for then going away and researching that. Now, that first question may not be a question in the literal sense. It may be a prompt of some form. But it's that first stage of learning where we go, why is that? So questions can be acting as a prompt, images can act as a prompt, videos can act as a prompt, events can act as a prompt. There's huge numbers of prompts out there. So our primary layer at the very beginning is this prompt, this primary layer question. Secondary layer questions are the sorts of questions we then ask in order to unpack the primary question. In other words, how did that happen? If that asteroid came through what's it made of? Where's it going? Where did it come from? What's the effect on the people on the ground? Should we be more concerned about this? Should we be actually finding out how many of these are coming? So our secondary layer questions are an unpacking process. Tertiary questions basically allow us to then go and do the research to do that. Where am I going to find this? What's the best avenue for here? Should I collaborate around this one? Is this best to find it in the science section or the social science section? Whatever it might be. Once we build all that together and we've collated all that information and resource and understanding, then we come to quaternary layer questions. And quaternary layer questions involve distilling and synthesizing all this information, this knowledge, this understanding we now have, and trying to actually compact it down into something that makes sense. In other words, we're looking at relationships between all the elements that we now know and understand and how they work together to give us an overarching framework. So there's different types of questions, and you can have a look at the resource, the online resource, and download that and have a look at this in more detail. Like all the competencies, what we're trying to do here is structure them into three sort of tiers as such. One is building an understanding, a knowledge base that we can use and then build understanding from that knowledge base. Understanding, for example, to think of our own thinking and who we are. Be able to structure clever questions, prompts that initiate curiosity. Clever questioning and thinking that reuses our knowledge and ideas and frameworks that we have already inside our heads. And then the synthesis and distillation process. We need to actually formally develop that capacity with kids. The techniques that they will develop out of that is being able to process complex thinking processes, which require rich metacognitive language. In other words, building on the language of learning, which we'll come to later on, and also our understanding of what good thinking process look like. So what are our questioning techniques? What are the different types of thinking for different situations? And then, of course, we want to develop dispositions in thinking. Thinking dispositions where young learners are naturally good thinkers. When they see something, they don't go, oh, that's interesting, but they know what to do with that. Oh, that's interesting. What do they do next? They need to interrogate their understanding. They need to actually combine their knowledge, ideas and concepts and being creative. Applying a series of clever questions to develop solutions to those questions and understandings. Being critical of what they see. And applying ideas and concepts and virtues wisely. Okay, so understand that wisdom. So when we look at thinking and questioning, we're really looking at a very integrated network here. If we really want to question things, then we have to do some deep thinking. But do we want to do any thinking at all? We're asking ourselves questions all the time. So the richness of the questions really delivers the richness of the outcome. Our third competency is collaboration. And I just made the point here at the very beginning that collaboration is not the answer to everything. It's not the solution to everything. There is a time for working on our own. And it's a real subtlety as to know when is that time. When's the best time for us to work on our own, and when's the best time to sit around in a group and have conversations and be prompted and informed by other people. One of the largest challenges for collaboration is understanding that people's worldview is different to ours. Everybody has a unique worldview. You might walk into an exhibition somewhere and look at the carpet on the floor and think, that's beautiful carpet, I'd love to have that carpet in my home. Other people will look at that carpet on the floor and think, goodness me, what were they thinking? It's the same carpet, but our worldview skews how we view things. And it may take time to get people to think about something differently. Changing our thinking is a real challenge. And collaboration is the process of changing our thinking in the company of other people. Other people's intensity, their logic, their rationale, their ideas, their prompting, makes us question our own thinking. So the sorts of processes, the sort of the knowledge base, so to speak, is being able to speak well orally, being able to have conversations, being able to actually reflect back what other people have said, acknowledging what they have said before you enter into your piece about what you want to say, sharing your ideas, and that requires trust. Okay, because if you're going to share some of your ideas, you don't want to be sort of shouted down or criticised, etc. So it's important to think about how other people feel as well as you feel. The listening and reviewing of others' thoughts. Appreciate everyone's contribution will be different, but it will all contribute to the overall learning process. Some of the techniques really is around debating, understanding that you don't necessarily have to agree with everything someone says, but don't write off everything that they say. So pick out the bits that mean something to you and you can add to your world. And if you feel really concerned about what they're saying, ask yourself, where's my view come from? Where's my opinion come from? This collaboration requires discipline, because it's quite often, in some of the people's nature to sort of lean forward and sort of, well, no, I really need to tell you this. This is really, really important, and have that floor space. And so that takes discipline, flexibility, and creativity. Resilience, respect, patience, and trust are the sort of the magic techniques here in terms of actually building that trust and building that resilience and respect amongst the group. There are 3 key words: please, sorry, and thank you. They should be used regularly, okay, throughout the conversation. In any group, people will make mistakes, okay, and people will contribute some really good material. And it's important to acknowledge each of those positions. And please, sorry, and thank you are critical words in collaborative teams that work really, really well. Defining roles in the group is important, and having a technique around there to work that out. Leadership in groups is always contentious. Who will lead and who will follow, who wants to lead and who should lead, maybe sometimes 2 separate things. The dispositions we want to see out of this is that we go into collaborative environments looking for new ideas and concepts to augment our own. We're not looking to go there to tell everybody else what we think. That's part of the picture, but the dominant part of the picture is that we want to bring in new ideas and new concepts. We want to be supportive of each other and encouraging. We want to be humble. We want to resolve differences of opinion to the point where sometimes we have to say that we just have to agree to disagree. We have to have the difficult questions, and we have to just get our headspace around the fact that the sum of the group, the whole of the group, is made up of parts. And so your ideas you'll borrow from different people at different rates and places and times. So those are the next 2 competencies. You can go away now and read these in more detail in the resource, and then we'll come back and look at the final 3 competencies in the next video. Thank you very much.